Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? I hope you're all doing well. I hope you had a great 2 weeks. Um, so, this week is a fun week, a special week. It's Thanksgiving week, at least here in the United States. I know um, for those of you in Canada, that was a month or so ago. But in the United States, here we are looking forward to Thanksgiving on Thursday. And so I want to just um, uh, get out of our outline for just one session here, and I want to relate this subject of faith, which we have been so intently studying and faithful with week after week, actually every 2 weeks, to study and grow deeper in together and relate faith to the subject of Thanksgiving. And so that's what we're going to do today on this faith intensive. First of all, let me just go over a couple of administrative things that I always remind you guys of, but we want you all to know that we have a YouTube channel, and you can go and subscribe and click on the drop down menu there, where you can be notified of any content that we upload to our YouTube channel. And also there's the ones we tell you about every time in terms of social media. There's Facebook, that is Based on Faith. Instagram is official_based on faith. Twitter, of course, and Parler is the new one. Bear with us because we are trying to learn how to use Parler. But please go on there and follow us on Parler as well. And of course, we have the website basedonfaith.org. And also, I want to remind you of an email address you can use to contact us. It is info@basedonfaith.org. And so I'd like you all to keep in mind that we really enjoy getting messages. Actually, we get a lot of Facebook messages as well from the post, and it's very encouraging because I like to hear that you all are watching, of course, but more than that, really getting something from the teachings or the encouragement throughout the week that we post on social media. And so if you have questions, please email questions or message those to us, anything like that. If this has been a blessing to you, so encouraging for us to hear that. And so with that, I'm just going to go ahead and start with today's topic. And so in keeping with the theme of Thanksgiving, this is called Overflowing in Thanksgiving Causes Us to Overflow in Faith. I want you to be aware, you can go on to the website basedonfaith.org. In the blog section, the newest blog article is titled the same as this faith intensive teaching. So go on, you can read the article as well. And so I'm going to be using this article as part of today's teaching. So let's start with Thanksgiving. What is Thanksgiving to begin with? What is this? So Thanksgiving is really gratitude that is directed towards someone. Okay, in this case, we are directing it towards God, of course. And so we are being thankful or grateful towards God. And so it's one who, a person who gives thanks or acknowledges a kindness. That's another part of the definition. And so when I was looking at this definition, the word acknowledge, it really, to me, there's a reference in terms of legal documents. When I draft a legal document and I have clients sign these, pretty frequently at the end, there is an acknowledgement section where the person is signing, and a lot of times there's witnesses and a notary. And so the acknowledgement section is saying, I acknowledge that this person signed in my presence. I know this to be who they are, either by ID or I know them personally, and they signed in my presence on this day. And so an acknowledgement is really, it's acknowledging something that's already there or has already been done. Okay, and so that's really important. I want you to keep that in mind as we think about faith. So again, let me just read that portion of the definition again. It's someone who is giving thanks or acknowledging a kindness. So acknowledging, again, meaning it's already been done. We are saying this has already been done and we're thankful for it. Okay, so in terms of faith, let me just go ahead and relate the two together. So faith, we know, is something that we're pulling in from the future. And we also know that the Bible tells us that God actually starts at the end and he creates a thing. And then he goes back to the beginning and he works from there. So towards that end. So he has already created the end from the beginning. And so in terms of faith and something that we're believing for, when we give thanks, when we acknowledge God's goodness, we can be thanking him for something that we've already seen happen and it's already been pulled into, what was then the present, but it's now the past. But now specifically in terms of faith, we know this thing, if it's according to the will of God, it's already been done. It's already in the future and I just need to pull it into my present. So I'm going to acknowledge by faith that he has already created that thing, and now I'm here and I'm working towards that because that's the way God works. So again, when we overflow in thanksgiving, we then will overflow in faith. So one of the ways we can increase our faith and overflow in faith is by increasing or turning up the dial on our thanksgiving. And so, faith can never be complete until it is accompanied, and more importantly, because it's faith, preceded by thanksgiving. So I want to review a couple of concepts first, and then we're going to kind of bring this full circle. So Hebrews 11:1, this is the King James Version. It says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Okay, and so obviously, and I think in these teachings you all have seen, I generally use that as the starting definition of faith. It's my favorite verse. And so when we start, obviously there's more we can learn about faith, and we are doing that. But it's a good starting point. And faith is it's a foundation on which we build. And when we build, what are we building? So we are building walls that are the promises that are coming into the present, and they're being built on top of the foundation of faith that we already have. And so we have the foundation first and then the walls. So faith is a foundation on which we build. Okay, if we don't have a solid foundation, then the hopes for the future really cannot be brought into the present very effectively. So those hopes and dreams, without faith, they're really going to stay hopes and dreams. You're always going to be hoping, because you never add the component of faith to hope. So it's always going to be out in the future. And now Hebrews 11 goes on to tell us, and this is verse 6, that without faith it is impossible to please him, meaning God. For he that comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. This is the King James Version. So in order for us to please God, we must have faith. I mean, must is an imperative word there. We have to have faith in order to please God. So if we don't have faith, we are not pleasing God. It says, not even that we're just pleasing him a little bit. It says that it is impossible for us to please God without faith. And so impossible is one of those absolute words, right? So what does impossible mean? Impossible means there is a 0% chance of this thing happening, right? I mean, I'm gonna get dramatic here. I'm gonna say there is a -% chance of this thing happening. So impossible is not probable and it is not certain, right? The door, so in this situation, let's say the door is shut and it's locked and it's barricaded. This door is not opening. It's shut and it's locked on that thing happening. It's impossible. So here's a picture of pleasing God with a door that is shut, that's locked and barricaded, in terms of being able to please God without faith, right? So it is impossible. I just want to emphasize that over and over. It is impossible to please God without faith. And so we need faith. It's crucial. We have to have faith, even to just believe that God exists, to come to him and say, I believe you. I can't see you. You know, I'm going to make you the center of my life. I can't see you, but, in order to do that, I have to have faith that he even exists, and then I have to have faith that he is who he is. And here in this verse 6, it says, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So I have to have faith that he's going to reward me for diligently seeking him. So we need faith, again, to just come to God initially. And we need it to live our life. We need it to live and fulfill our purpose and our destiny. And we do this by calling the future, those promises, into the present. So faith acts like it's like going fishing. We talked about this in one of the earlier teachings. So hope is out there. It's like the fish you're trying to catch. It's out there, and you're fishing, and you bait your hook, and you cast it out, and you catch, so you snag something, and you start to reel it in. This is what faith is like. Faith is like the fishing rod, okay? It's like the fishing rod, and you are reeling that promise in to the present, okay? And, faith is also, faith is a noun, but faith is a verb as well. So you are also, if we want to say it as a verb, as you're reeling that fish in, that promise in, you are using faith, which is your rod, but you are faithing that in as you reel it in. So we know that Jesus gave us a gift of faith when we came to him, when we believe, when we said, yes, I believe that you are the only way to get to God, right? I give my life to you. And so when we become a Christian, when we what we say born again, Jesus gives us a gift of faith from himself. So it's the same faith that he has. You can look at Hebrews 10:38. We also, and this is going to take us up until where I really want to get to today, is Romans 12:3. So we have been given the measure of faith. So let me explain this to you this way. Think of it as when you become born again, there is a person in heaven or an angel, and they have a scoop. It's the same size scoop. For all new Christians, all new believers, they scoop into the heart of Jesus the same measure of faith, and they put it into you. And that is your gift of faith, exactly the same mirror image of what Jesus has, which we know is victorious, right? But you can think of it this way. Everybody's given the same or the measure of faith, right? So, but what you do with it, that's your, you have a free will. You have to do something with it. So here's a different kind of example. We are all born, with the same muscles, right? So obviously there are people who, have really defined muscles, and then, others who don't. So everybody's given that same muscle. So think of this as the faith muscle. What are these people doing to get a stronger faith muscle? Well, they're using it. They're working out. They are feeding it protein. They're working out. They're actually doing something with it, and they're being proactive to use it and develop it. So how do you do this? How do you develop your faith muscle, or how do you increase your measure of faith? Well, one way we'll talk about, that's what this faith intensive is about, is one way to do that. So, and it's a very important way, and it's by giving thanks. So it sounds elementary, right? But and it actually it is. But sometimes I just think Christianity is not complicated. It is not. It is meant for everybody to understand. I think some of the issue is that we don't know, and we're not taught, and so we're all learning, and we're all growing and developing. And so that's one of the missions of Based on Faith, is to be a discipleship ministry, to teach and to really go into the Word and teach what the Bible is actually saying. So one way to develop your faith muscle is by giving thanks. So it's no coincidence that actually teaching on this today, this week, is Thanksgiving. And so I just want to give you a brief little history lesson, nothing too major. But so in the United States, there is, history shows us that as early as 1541, this celebration of Thanksgiving was going on. But about 100, less than 100 years later, so 1621, is this particular Thanksgiving celebration is what we model our Thanksgiving holiday on. And that's the one that we've all heard and studied, in school, which was in Plymouth, Massachusetts. So, the Pilgrims, after they came over, obviously, they didn't land and go to their hotel room, right? I mean, I think sometimes we don't really think about the little things that that we take for granted that they did not have. And so, half of the Pilgrims died in that first winter. I mean, half. That's just, it's, to really think about what they went through. And really, we know that they came over in pursuit of freedom. They had been persecuted, and specifically, they were seeking religious freedom to worship God without the rules and the confines of the government, of the monarchy there. They wanted to be able to worship God as, you know, as their relationship with God dictated, right? And so they came over, and again, they just suffered and had to get used to the new climate. They had to build homes, safe homes, endure the winter, figure out how to grow food and survive, in that way. And so they, after this first year, this is when the Thanksgiving celebration in 1621 occurred. So half of the pilgrims died, but then they got together with the Indians, or Native Americans, to join them in several of their religious activities, and to give thanks and to celebrate this harvest. By the way, my my grandmother, we called her Mamaw. Her grandmother, she always said, was full-blooded Indian. So I wish I knew more about them, and that history there. But I always think of, when Thanksgiving comes, I remember her telling me that, and just kind of, really, we can read these stories all we want, but if we really knew what they went through, and then after that, celebrating, I mean, they were thankful. I just want you to really, so what I want you to do is really just get a good picture of what they went through, and then just how thankful they were, and when they were celebrating the harvest, they didn't just go to the grocery store, to pick up the list of groceries for Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, they were thankful that this harvest, this crop grew, and that it wasn't ruined, and so just everything that they had, they were just thankful and knew how much of a blessing that it was. So anyway, they celebrated the harvest, they celebrated life, they celebrated their new relationship with the natives, and they also gave thanks in advance for the harsh winter that was about to come, that God would watch over them, protect them, and help them to endure through what was coming. So, okay, so let's get back to this. Okay, so the key verse here that I want to get to is Colossians 2:7. Okay, and this version that I'm going to read you is from the King James Version. Paul writes this. He says that we are to be rooted and built up in him and established in the faith, as you have been taught, therefore, or abounding therein with thanksgiving. So again, this means that if we are to abound in faith, or if we are to overflow in faith, we have to first abound or overflow in thanksgiving. And so this is a remarkable connection here. So if you claim to have a strong faith, you have to have a strong thanksgiving. You cannot have a strong faith with a weak thanksgiving. And this is similar to in James, where he says, faith without works is dead. So without thanksgiving, your faith is going to be on life support. Okay, so faith is really a critical feeding force factor of faith. Think of an example like this. So let's say you have been believing for some kind of physical healing. Let's say in the article I wrote, healing for high blood pressure. And so you have been dealing with this. You periodically have to go to your doctor, which takes time and energy. It costs money. You have to get medication monthly, which is expensive. It affects your daily life. It's a big deal. It is kind of consuming your life, and you've been really believing for healing. And so you are healed. Okay, so in this example, you're healed of this condition. And after years of dealing with this, now you don't have to go to the doctor all the time. You have time. You don't have to spend lots of money for medical expenses. You don't have to spend money on prescription medications. And your life has freedom, and your life has been extended even. And so you have believed for this. It has come into the present. You've reeled it in. It's become present. Now you are grateful. You are so grateful that you have been healed, right? So you give thanks, and you tell people, I believed for faith, and God, He's already healed me, but I believed for it, and it became, manifest, and I see it now in the natural. And so, we see that a lot, right? But what we need to really also focus on is the thanksgiving before the healing. So what we also need to be doing is to say, okay, as I'm believing for this healing, I am thanking God that I know He has already healed me, because Isaiah 53 said that, I am already healed. So out here, He created the end from the beginning. So He created, out here's my healing. I know I'm healed, but I'm right here on this timeline, that we live on. But I'm moving towards it, and I'm pulling that in to my present, knowing that it's already there for me, because God creates the end from the beginning. And so I take it by faith. So I'm going to thank Him anyway, even though I'm right here and it's out there. I'm pulling it in. And so what's going to happen is, instead of you hand cranking that fish in, that promise in, that healing in, you're going to get a motorized mechanism here. So your reel is it's gonna start turning, and you're not gonna have to be turning. It's gonna speed up the process, and it's gonna exponentially help you be able to pull that promise in. So another example that I thought of is by adding thanksgiving that precedes your promise coming into the present, or thanksgiving connected to faith, is like you going from a 10-speed bike to a motorcycle, right? So it's going to add power to it. And Thanksgiving is very critical in terms of faith. Again, so picture faith hooked up to artificial nutrition and hydration. Picture tubes running in your faith. I guess we called it a faith muscle, but into your veins. But being hooked up to something to try to keep them going. So Thanksgiving is going to take you off of the life support. It's going to add life to the faith, and it's going to increase your faith muscles. So Thanksgiving and faith are kind of like a cycle. There's negative cycles and there's positive cycles. So, doubt and unbelief and complaining, that's a negative cycle. Well, we can have thanksgiving and faith, and then we pull in the promise. And so what happens is the idea is that we need to have thanksgiving with faith. We pull the promise in, we're thankful, and then we're believing for something else, and we're thankful for that because we know it's already done, and we're pulling it in. And so it just becomes more, there's more momentum and more momentum with thanksgiving and faith, and thanksgiving and faith. And so it feeds in a, it's like a continuing momentum in a positive cycle. So by faith, you pull those promises into the present, and you do that better with thanksgiving, obviously. So what I want to do, I just want to end this way. I want to read you something to just conclude with. So one of in Psalms, so in Psalms 44, verses 8 and 9, this was one use of thanksgiving for, obviously we've been talking about personal significance in terms of thanksgiving and faith, but I also want to, obviously with the current state of the world, also talk about thanksgiving to God for national deliverance. And so I think, we all are aware of what's going on in the world, especially in the United States, and the government and the election and everything. And so I want to really, I was reading this proclamation that George Washington wrote. He wrote this on the 3rd day of October in 1789 in New York. And so it's a proclamation that he wrote where he was recommending to all of the states to have a national day of thanksgiving, public thanksgiving and prayer. But let me read this verse to you in Psalm 44 so we can have some biblical foundation for this, because Psalms, obviously, we believe David wrote most of them, and so David obviously became king of Israel. And so this verse 7 and 8, this is the Passion Translation. It says, "Only you will be our Savior from all our enemies. All those who hate us, you have brought to shame. So now I constantly boast in you. I can never thank you enough." And so in terms of, national significance, I think thanksgiving to God for national deliverance, in connection with faith, the promises that God has for us individually, He has promises for our nation as well. And so let me just take you back to, what was that year again? 1789. And so the first president of our country, he wrote this. It's a little bit lengthy, but I do, I contemplated on just reading a couple of parts, but I want to read you the entire proclamation. I think it's really powerful, and we will end with this. So, George Washington writes, by the President of the United States of America, a proclamation. Whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and humbly to implore His protection and favor. And whereas both houses of Congress have by their joint committee requested me to recommend to the people of the United States a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed by acknowledging with grateful hearts the many and signal favors of Almighty God, especially by affording them an opportunity peaceably to establish a form of government for them, their safety and happiness. Now, therefore, I do recommend and assign Thursday, the 26th day of November next, to be devoted by the people of these states to the service of that great and glorious being who is the beneficent author of all the good that was, that is, or that will be, that we may then all unite in rendering unto him our sincere and humble thanks for his kind care and protection of the people of this country previous to their becoming a nation, for the signal and manifold mercies and the favorable interpositions of his providence in the course and conclusion of the late war, the Revolutionary War, for the great degree of tranquility, union, and plenty which we have since enjoyed, for the peaceable and rational manner in which we have been enabled to establish constitutions of government for our safety and happiness, and particularly the national one now lately instituted for the civil and religious liberty with which we are blessed, and the means we have of acquiring and diffusing useful knowledge, and in general for all the great and various favors which he has been pleased to confer upon us. And this part I really like as well. And also that we may then unite in most humbly offering our prayers and supplications to the great Lord and ruler of nations, and beseech him to pardon properly and punctually, to render our national government a blessing to all the people by constantly being a government of wise, just, and constitutional laws, discreetly and faithfully executed and obeyed, to protect and guide all sovereigns and nations, especially such as have shown kindness to us, and to bless them with good governments, peace and concord, to promote the knowledge and practice of true religion and virtue, and the increase of science among them and us, and generally to grant unto all mankind such a degree of temporal prosperity as he alone knows to be best. So, actually, that's so powerful, don't you think? I want to end this way and just say that let's just all agree with those words of George Washington. And even though he's not living, we are. His words still live with us. And that prayer, I think, it's a prayer that we can have, and we can be thankful and in faith believe for ourselves personally, but for our nation, for national deliverance. And so this week, I just want to leave you with, I always tell you love and blessings, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. But I wish you and your family a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.